Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Migration Summit 2022 and our design workshop, Designing Entrepreneurship Support Networks. Dr. Lana Cook from MIT React, and I'm so excited to introduce our facilitator and host for today's session, Selen Ucak from Refugee Investment Network. Without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Selen so we can get into the work together.
Thank you, Lana. Thank you, MIT React team and Migration Summit for having us here today. Thank you all of you for joining. We're very excited to exchange ideas and think through designing better support systems for refugee entrepreneurs together. This is following from a great session that just wrapped up as a part of the Migration Summit on entrepreneurship education. And for those of you who are joining from that session, we will try to carry over some of the great ideas that came up in that discussion as well. I'll do a quick recap as we get into the discussion. And for those who weren't in that other session, you can sort of join in the conversation and idea generation on this session here. So let me quickly share my screen with you so I can talk us through what we're going to try to accomplish here today. Obviously, we're all here because we're interested in designing better support networks for refugee entrepreneurs. I know there are a lot of refugee entrepreneurs in the audience, which is terrific because that's exactly how we would like to think about designing these systems with all of your needs and lived experiences in mind. So what we hope that this workshop will do for all of us, whether you are a refugee entrepreneur yourself or entrepreneurship service provider, part of the support ecosystem in some way, is that we challenge our assumptions through the ideas exchange that we will have. We're gonna try to articulate the unique needs of refugee entrepreneurs. We can go on and on for hours, obviously also about, what do entrepreneurs need in general, but we're going to talk about the unique needs for refugee entrepreneurs. So the, great quality entrepreneurship support systems and the plus that's required for refugee entrepreneurs. We're going to try to identify the common gaps in existing services, and not just in existing individual services, but at the systems level, right? How do those services that exist or the support resources that exist fit with each other or don't? Where are there gaps in the continuity of those services? And then, when we get into the design portion, into breakouts with our facilitators, really envision, improvements in those support systems that meet refugee entrepreneurs' needs at different stages of their entrepreneurial journey as well. And we are really hoping that this workshop is a way to collaborate and exchange ideas among existing services and also create new ideas as well. So we have about 10-15 minutes just very quickly for introductions, because I have also 3 special guests that I would like you to hear from with the solutions that they have come up with to serve refugee entrepreneurs, to get us thinking about all of this. And then a couple of questions that we can discuss as a group together to set some of those sort of assumptions on the table, given the complexity and the diversity of the communities we're talking about and the topic we're talking about, but then go into our design breakouts and really get your thoughts and your ideas to envision these better support networks and come back together again at the end to exchange what we have come up with in in the breakouts. So in the way of introductions, just very quickly, I want to tell you about Refugee Investment Network. You can feel free to get in touch with me afterwards at any point, if you'd like to learn more, because I'm going to go fast. We are a nonprofit organization. We're based in the US. We are the first impact investing collaborative that's working on creating long-term solutions to global forced migration. So we're working to fill that strategic gap between investors seeking impact in this space and looking for solutions and looking to support solutions, and the refugee entrepreneurs and other types of projects that need that kind of support. A quick sort of definition note. As RIN, we define refugees quite broadly, both forcibly displaced across borders as well as internally due to a number of factors and reasons, and that's the definition that we can use throughout this workshop as well. We have an investing framework that's called a refugee lens framework, sort of modeled somewhat after the gender lens that's that we use in our advisory work as well, in our work with investors, to qualify and measure impact investments. So for example, refugee-owned businesses, refugee-led businesses, refugee supporting businesses would be part of that lens as well. Host community owned businesses that are sourcing from refugee-owned businesses would be part of that lens, and other types. Again, can't get into that in a lot of detail, but it's there as a resource for you, which is a great lens for investing, but it can also be used in supporting refugee lens businesses and solutions that have an impact on forced displacement. So that's there for you as a resource as well. My role at the Refugee Investment Network is entrepreneurship lead. So I'm working on a project called Resilient 100, which is provided by Silver Lining, which is a small business support services company that's trying to make their services more inclusive and bring their services to a more diverse community of entrepreneurs. So we're working with them as RIN, as their impact partner, and we have a cohort of refugee-led and refugee supporting businesses that are receiving business coaching and other types of support through this program. So sort of that's where I'm coming from with my experience in this program, working with refugee entrepreneurs and previously as well. And all of your ideas today and feedback is going to certainly help this and other similar programs in the future as well. And I'll try to bring some of the learnings and challenges that we've had in this program, in taking an existing entrepreneurship support service and making it more inclusive of refugees. What do we run into our discussion as well. So now, very quickly, like I said, I have 3 guests who are also going to help us facilitate the workshop throughout the session as well. And a particular reason they're here is because of their entrepreneurial experience themselves and their experience as either refugees or migrants who are now working with and working on supporting refugee entrepreneurs. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So please tell us, what you do and why you do what you do. And also, just to sort of warm us up and get us thinking about refugee entrepreneurs' needs, what is a key and important, unique element of your organization that you feel is benefiting refugee entrepreneurs particularly well? So if you can please cover those 2 questions super quickly. We'll start with Matula Ramati and then go to Matai Muon and Yunus Friend. Matula, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thanks, Selen.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. Thanks a lot. I'm Matullah Rahmati, as mentioned by Selen. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've started and ran around 5 to 6 businesses, different ones, since 2017 until now. And I'm a business mentor with some of the programs. I started my own impact investing firm back on 2020 in Afghanistan, and then contributing to a lot of activities towards entrepreneurship development. And why we're doing what we're doing is here that I'm originally from Afghanistan, and with the collapse of our government on August last year, so we basically lost everything, and I was evacuated from my country through a US operation in a chartered flight on October. And for almost 7 months, I was in a refugee camp in Abu Dhabi in Emirates. And then that was when I started to think of actually starting maybe a new business or extending the line of activities that we had, because everything stopped in Afghanistan. So, and then I figured out that I need a lot of support and the network. And fortunately, I was blessed with good people I knew in different countries. And through the mentorship that I provide, I knew other thinking, what if other people that they might need the same support, how they're gonna manage it, or how they can get those supports. And then rather than thinking about my own self only, I started thinking of, okay, how we can put together like an umbrella of support for those who are refugee entrepreneurs or displaced entrepreneurs. That was how we came up with Entrepreneur on the Go. And at the Entrepreneur on the Go, we have 3 category of supports. We have, we can say, an ecosystem to offer you, ecosystem which includes a community, a vibrant community of mentors, potential co-founders, language buddies who support you in learning the new language in the new country. And then lastly, legal advisors who can help you with the legality. And then we have tools to help you choose the country you want to go, choose the city, and then you know how to form the company, the other expenses and taxes. And the last part is about opportunities that we let people know about, or entrepreneurs know about the opportunities which are available in different countries. And currently we are present in France, Germany, Spain, UK, and US, these 5 countries. We have 1 team member in each country who are constantly trying to, providing with more and more support. So what's unique about our platform is that we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We don't want to do everything on our own, but rather we're trying to bring under one umbrella, under one platform, all the available resources, which normally takes very long for entrepreneurs or founder until they figure out that those resources are already there for them. Thanks.
Sorry, thank you, Matullah. So Matai, can we go to you?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Selen. It's exciting to be here. So my name is Matai Mo. I'm an Aba refugee based in Nairobi, Kenya. I'm originally from South Sudan. In terms of my background, I'm social entrepreneur. Been working with South Sudanese women and youth refugees for the last 2 years in an initiative we call Today Africa, where we provide skills in area of entrepreneurship, technology, and also, introducing social innovation among the Aba refugee community. So this is something that we've been working on, working with these refugees, trying to give them skills and the necessary knowledge that they require, to be self-reliant while they are here and when they go back home. The reason why I'm doing this, because myself, I've been a refugee for half of my life. And so I found that gaps that refugees, lack skills. And so they require to be mentored, they need to be supported. And that kind of support does have to come outside. It also has to be driven from within. Although an external support is also important, but when it is done by the refugee, it makes more sense. So in terms of the uniqueness of what we are doing, is that most of our programs are designed by refugees. We are purely refugee-led organization. And so most of the solutions that we generate through this training program and vocational interventions come from refugees. So we use intervention of human design centered thinking, where we utilize the tools of modern innovation to solve refugees issues, like entrepreneurship and the use of technology by refugees to run their businesses. So I guess that's what we do, and I'm excited to be here. I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Matai. We're excited you're here too, and look forward to your facilitation later on too. So Yunus, just very quickly again, by way of introductions.
Sure, thanks a lot, Selen. So my name is Yunus, and our story starts somehow in Malta in 2018, where in a time where a lot of sea rescue ships were impounded there, and I was there being a shipbuilder, helping maintaining these sea rescue ships, but there was no way back and no way forward. So me and the two crew members said, like, hey, we cannot help save people's lives. We can, however, go look for what refugees are doing here on the island. So we went to the largest refugee camp, and we started to talk to the people. We started to help where we can. And there was an NGO, which we founded an NGO, which now continues this work. But I also learned a lot about like work opportunities of refugees there, and there were many people who were working in precarious jobs and construction sites and dishwashing, cleaning, and there was so much lost potential. And one way out was actually self-employment or entrepreneurship, if you like. And it was totally illegal. In Malta, you can even create your own business if you're a rejected asylum seeker, which is, I think, unique. But there was no support system at all. So I say, like, okay, hey, let's create an incubator for refugee entrepreneurs. And it turned out to be like the single worst idea I ever had, because we failed immediately, and there was so much bias involved and so much hasty assumptions, so much of like projection and solution I know from another context onto this problem. And I think that's something we're going to talk about later with Selen, assumptions, and it helped us to fail early and helped us to learn, and we iterated 100 times more, failed 100 times more, and we ended up today with a great service, which is Enterprise. And Enterprise is an online network where we connect founders, refugee founders, with established entrepreneurs. And what is unique is that we basically start with a question. So we don't have financial advisors, financial or legal advisors, mentors who have a specific skill. But we start with a question. So if you're a refugee founder, you can ask something like, how do I write my first invoice? And then you get matched with someone who knows it from experience, not necessarily by training. And that makes us unique. And I admire people who can build an ecosystem. We just try to be a small piece of the puzzle in the ecosystem here in Germany and the EU. Thanks.
Thank you, Yunus. I mean, all three of you are working on great solutions, and I hope this workshop, gives you a chance to share some of those ideas with others, but also, take some ideas from that workshop and, build upon or, continue to iterate what you're doing as well. So let's get into the discussion now. Before we have, breakout groups and, design the support networks that we're envisioning, I want to, like I said, quickly recap some ideas from the previous session. It was a very rich, great discussion. And, some of the takeaways were that obviously supporting refugee entrepreneurs is a long-term and a multidimensional topic. It's very complicated, and certainly we are under no sort of illusion that we're going to be able to come up with all the answers in the next 45 minutes, but we can come up with some clues. That mindset is important. The mindset from a mindset of dependency to agency, and that's what entrepreneurship also brings. I'm going to add a little sort of personal opinion there. I don't think that mindset necessarily exists among the refugee communities. I think it's more the mindset of the support systems and the international communities and the organizations, that have, that exist, that also need to be transformed from that mindset of, dependency to agency with entrepreneurship. That, we need to come up with creative solutions in delivering services, in mentorship, in coaching, and the scalability of those solutions and the scalability of those services is obviously very important. But as much as scaling what works, sort of putting the pieces of the puzzle together and being able to fit different types of support programs and services to form a complete system is also what's needed. And I think we can focus a lot on that during this workshop, is sort of at the systems level, where are the gaps and what are what is needed to fill those gaps and provide more complete solutions, more complete sort of bundles, as it was discussed in the previous session. Also, another sort of definition note, maybe just to get us all on the same page. Entrepreneurship is usually the term we use, and it connotes innovation and sort of maybe fast growth. There's a certain type of Silicon Valley type of entrepreneurship, right? But that's not the only type of entrepreneurship we need to discuss here. In fact, we shouldn't. We should have a more sort of complete definition of entrepreneurship and focus on all kinds of sort of activities that lead to self-reliance, self-employment, job creation, including small businesses, more traditional types of small businesses, as opposed to let's say tech-based startups only, right? So that is something we can also keep in mind in thinking about the support networks and the different stages of businesses that we're going to be talking about. So as a group, before we go into our own breakouts, let's hear from the audience members a little bit about who comes to your mind when we say a refugee entrepreneur. So if we're talking about the users of the systems that we're going to design, and given the incredible diversity and complexity of those communities, I'd love to hear from you some different types of refugee entrepreneurs that you have worked with or think about when we say that. And please just raise your hand. I'll call on you, and then you can unmute and go ahead and jump in. Shall I get us started? I'll get us started. And then I'll go to Abdul. So, a Syrian refugee woman who is now living in Turkey, who was, who had a professional degree in Syria, let's say she was an architect, has been displaced to Turkey, can't work in her field and has to start a business, putting maybe her creative skills and training to a different use and start, a design company, maybe even a, fashion, business, one picture of a refugee entrepreneur. What are others? Abdul, you wanna? jump in.
Thank you, Selen. Thank you for introduction. Actually, I'm doing training in finance for entrepreneurs. I meet here in Turkey Syrian entrepreneurs with different ideas, with different project ideas, from agriculture to IT. You find something like artistic projects, doing epoxy, something like that, some agriculture, also on same time. But I have a small story about this entrepreneurs. My mother now has about 60 years old. She is with me here in Gaziantep. In Syria, was doing designing fashions, designing making suits and dresses for women. But when she came to Turkey, she couldn't work in its specialist. Now she's doing something like how can I say it? Bonsai from kubers, bonsai trees from kubers.
From Cyprus, yeah.
Yeah, kubers.
Oh,
Cobbles.
okay.
Kuber.
Yes.
Yeah. And now joining galleries, joining festivals in this artistic, in this art branch.
Mhm.
This is kind of example that I met. I know very much.
Yes.
So, as you mentioned, it's really important to know the entrepreneurs, what they want, what they need, what skills that they are need to run their business.
Yeah.
Like in my measure, finance is a important branch in important.
Abdul, I'm gonna, sorry to interrupt, but you're gonna have a chance to really get into this in detail in your breakouts in a minute. At the moment, let's just like sort of get 1 word, 2 word, quick description of the types of entrepreneurs that the personas, the users that we want to keep in mind as we do our designs. So if anyone else wants to jump in, either in the chat or by voice, sort of reflect that diversity of the refugee entrepreneur community, please jump in. Otherwise we can move on. Sandrine, go ahead.
Hello, this is Timothy.
Oh, Timothy, go ahead. I think your hand was up first. Yes, go ahead, please. Just very quickly though, okay?
Okay.
Just quickly describe.
Yeah. So this is Timothy. We're operating renewable energy business in the Nachi Valley refugee settlement. And as a result of that, we've interacted with so many refugees from different countries, from Congo, Burundi, and some of those places. Now, what stands out to me when we talk of refugee entrepreneurs, most of these refugees that come into Uganda come from backgrounds of like the farmers. Many of them were farmers or operating small businesses in their communities, rural communities. Mm-hmm. And so what comes to my mind is that young girl who was doing fashion and design in, say, Congo, and then has come to Uganda and would like to have a sewing machine so that she can continue doing stitching and dressmaking and things like that. And then I see mostly that young man who wants to set up a small shop where they can do retailing, retail, sell different things like that. So those are the kind of small scale, whatever, business that come to my mind. But again, in the course of our business, I've realized the opportunities for many acting as distributors of our products, whether if that would be briquettes or whether if that would be soap or other, raw materials for the production of such things. So I'm seeing refugees who would want to do small businesses, but they are sort of like gap fillers in the value chain of whether if that is in the renewable energy business or in milling, maize milling, food value additions, and things like that.
Agricultural value chains as
In
well.
the agricultural, whatever.
So, Abdul and I sort of focused on like urban, refugee entrepreneurs. You brought in, rural and, camp-based refugee entrepreneurs. Anyone else? Oh, Sandrine, go ahead. Thank you, Timothy.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Sandrine.
Yeah.
I used to be based in Turkey.
Welcome.
My experience is more on women entrepreneurship, and what I've seen is that the most successful one were like generally group of women who believe in one of them. So that one has a clearly like leader capability, able to inspire trust with the other woman, and that was really important. And generally, that person has had this attitude because they have been empowered by their own family. They had very strong fathers and mothers, or very strong husband. And of course, they are creative, they have the ideas and they have the tenacity, but they also really supported on the back by the community. And that gives them, I think, the self-confidence needed to lead the other one, and then together to build a successful project. So alone, they would not be successful, but because they have this capacity to inspire others, they're able to develop small cooperative or small project with 10, 15 women. And it can be in sewing, it can be in cooking, it can be like in different activities.
Great, thank you, Sandrine. So, we have until noon, so not much time left. Let's just dive into the breakouts now. Matula, myself, Matai, and Yunus, and possibly one more person from MIT, right? Based on how many breakouts we end up with, are going to help facilitate. But what we want to do in these breakouts is to use the collaborative boards mural to come up with the ideas and all our answers and reactions across a continuum of the life cycle of a business, right? So again, based on the entrepreneurs that you work with, or the, where you are as a refugee entrepreneur in your journey, and what you're looking to do next, your ideas and your concerns might be focused on, pre-launch and incubation. How do I come up with an idea to become an entrepreneur, or how do I support those who are, thinking about launching businesses for the first time, versus early stage businesses, startups that have already launched and are now trying to grow, versus the growth stage where, for the existing businesses, small businesses that, now may need different kinds of support. So when you come up with your, feedback, your thoughts, try to organize these, into these different stages, so that when we look at the support networks and systems that are needed, we can also distinguish these different, stages, and, think about creating continuity from one stage to another as well. So with that, Lana, if you could kindly help us get into breakout rooms. So let's see.
I'll open up the breakout rooms now.
Okay, wonderful.
And I'll share in each of the breakouts your individual mural board, which you see on the screen here. So grab any of these sticky notes. You can get additional sticky notes right here on the side tab under this little text box, and then you can grab sticky notes. You can resize them by just clicking on these little sides here. So really make that space your own, but the facilitators will also capture notes. So sending you all into your breakouts, and I'll drop those links into each of your respective rooms.
And if all else fails, jot down some notes.
Yeah, pen and paper always work. Right?
Exactly, that always works. But let's try
All
to
right.
get all the ideas on the boards as much as possible so we can see them all together.
All right. And so we'll see you all back here in 15 minutes.
Okay, and Lana, one more thing just to add. So start with the problem, okay? Like start with the gaps that you see exist now in those support systems, and then, you know, come up with the solutions for those gaps in better design systems. All right, with that said, I'll see you in one of the rooms. Thank you.
All right, welcoming everyone back.
Thank you, Lana. How did that go? Can we hear a little bit from the groups so far? Maybe, the facilitators, if you want to just jump in with a couple of, key elements, and we'll look at the boards as well at the same time.
Maybe we can start with group one.
It's been group one. Sorry, memory is too short.
I don't even know my group.
Yeah, I'll share screen and as we're looking.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go. Perfect. So this is group one. Who wants to claim? I think that's maybe like Lorraine.
Yes, that's us. Exactly. We had a really, really great session. Hang on, is this us? Yes, this is us. So one thing that that came up in all three bits was financing, but we even thought about support for refugees during the incubation and sort of startup phase when they're trying to focus on the project, but still they have to struggle with competing, living costs, childcare, education for their children. So this is one thing which would be a struggle. I'm just going to pick some interesting bits. We also spoke about lack of current refugee policies and refugee initiatives in terms of registration and setup. In startup, networking and linking refugee entrepreneurs with others. One interesting thing we came up with for growth is how do we get refugees in front of investors who can really help them grow? Thinking of all these Silicon Valley companies that are getting Series A, B, and C funding of like millions, but these come with connections. So how do we give refugees these sort of connections so they can have this access to this sort of finance? And I think that's a big stumbling block to it, the networks to access the finance. We also, let me do one more, which is interesting. Mentoring, of course, mentoring comes up all the time. Mentoring is very important. And environments for refugees and to set up and support. Okay, and laws. Okay, I'll stop there because I think we have lots of interesting stuff.
That's great. Let's go to group two. Matai, were you in group two?
It's interesting that I didn't know the group I was in, but I had a group. I had really very interesting group.
This is our
was
group.
it group two, Abdul?
Yeah, any one of you can jump in and just highlight
Wonderful.
a few things for us, maybe.
Yeah, Selen, maybe could you just share what we had gone through? I know it was really interesting discussion.
Me?
Yes.
Okay.
Just main point. Yeah.
It's very small for me to see now on the screen. I think we start in the incubation phase about the thank you. That the finance part was important and the break even, to make sure that the project were realistic and to make sure that the entrepreneur realized what it will take to get to there. And then we discuss it's also what do they need to get there. But more than hard figures and Excel and so on, it's about really having a discussion with them about what they want to do, the motivation, why they want it, and how do they see the path, and what are they ready to do in order to go on this path. So we thought that part was very important, but of course the financial part too. Then in terms of the incubator startup point, we thought that it's they will need information from the moment they start making money and so on to register, and mentorship in finance and bookkeeping, and to keep the business model. But it's also I like it's not for me, but to throw them in the sea and see if they can manage to learn to swim, but by staying close. So in the sense that not giving them training, but letting them try by doing, but with the knowledge that if they have anything, if they're really stuck, there is somebody out there to help them. So the knowledge that they can reach a network of experts then when they have a question and that they are stuck.
Yes.
And then in terms of incubation, we discussed a little bit that it's nice when you're refugees and the legal terms are not always good to have some legal support in order to scale, but also that public support can be very important, advocacy, but also the people around you, around your municipalities if it's needed, but that most of the country where there are refugees, the public support cannot always be trusted. So we stay a little bit on the discussion. Was that good summary?
Yeah, thanks a lot. That's wonderful. So I just want to add that I have main point taken. So fine way of sharing that with the team. So wonderful. Thanks.
Thank you. So from our group, and we put our ideas, I think, on the group one's board as well. So it's all, mashed together a little bit. But we talked about obviously the, incorporating refugees, lived experiences into the design of the program. So the importance of the refugee-led programs and bringing that, empathy for the experience of refugees into the design. The importance of, for the entrepreneurs, as well as for the support, programs, learning and adapting quickly. And we were actually in the middle of a, great discussion about, and David, please jump in if you want to add anything to my summary, is, businesses fail, new businesses fail, entrepreneurship is, as much about, failure as it is about success. So, if we simply have programs and support networks that help refugees launch businesses, but then, not carry that support over to the different stages and to help them also, adapt the business to something else, change the business model altogether, or, revive or come up with a new business idea altogether if the first one fails, that, taking into account in these very sort of, difficult environments and, challenging, situations, taking into account the possibility of failure of these businesses and how to respond to that in the support networks was something that we discussed. So I'll stop there if anyone else wants to add anything from my group, or we'll go to number 4.
Yeah, I can summarize what we discussed. We were focusing on the problems and barriers in the first place. What I found personally quite interesting was the note of Louise, who said, well, we have these entrepreneurship programs who successfully transfer some knowledge, but people struggle to continue the journey and apply that knowledge in the second step. And that was quite interesting because then also with Joelle, we had a rich discussion and brainstorming because there's on the one hand the problem of access to finance, but also there's the problem of not knowing how to apply and invest that money in your own business. So how to combine your knowledge with the funding you receive or you potentially receive. And then we have language barriers, which is definitely a problem and which creates the difficult situation for program directors to select among refugees and reduce their audience to people who are skilled in the language they're using in the program. We also had like Lily also had really great insights from Jordan. So where she said it's actually a luxury to take part in these programs because people have other needs and other and they are afraid of the risks involved with entrepreneurship. So that was a bit clashing with the somehow often discussed assumption in research that refugees are very eager to take risks, which is obviously not always true. Yeah, I think there are structural barriers as well, like how you have to take a local partner. There are also issues of accessing bigger markets, and that was particularly interesting for me, who's coming from the European Union, where everything is open market, and where you have great infrastructure. But if you we're not talking about markets beyond your country, we're talking about markets in the next city, where it's already difficult for some entrepreneurs to transport their goods to the next city and access a wider audience for their products and services. So very rich discussion on the problems.
Thank you, Yunus. I'm wondering if any of the groups, any of the discussions touched upon, refugee-specific entrepreneurship programs versus the broader entrepreneurial ecosystem and the programs and supports that exist in that, and sort of working to include refugees into those, and like sort of the differences between those two approaches and what works and what doesn't in those, if that came up. Yeah, Abdul, go ahead.
Yes, I think first of all, as Yunus mentioned, the language barriers between refugees and border entrepreneurs. Like our let me say experience. We're doing entrepreneurs for Syrian refugees in Arabic, but they cannot participate in entrepreneurs in Turkey, wider in Turkey, which is in Turkish language. I think first of all, this is we need to talk about.
Yes, I think, language also obviously came up in our group as well as an accessibility, an inclusion sort of barrier, and maybe access to technology and, to be able to, access digital, resources and programs. That has, also come up in our group as a, as a barrier to address, depending on the market, the environment. Yeah. So, I mean, any ideas on how to solve something, which seems as simple as the language barrier? Matilda, go ahead.
Well, I think that it's not only just the language, but it's all overall the expectation that we have from the person who's joining our program. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, language is one of the barriers, which is very important. But the other thing is the extent of technical knowledge that we want to transfer to the person. Because, it was 2 years ago, I was conducting an incubation program for the UN women in Afghanistan. It was for women who had very elementary education or no education at all, but they wanted to be entrepreneurs. So what we did was here that we took some of the sophisticated curriculums, but then we changed it into stories. And then we did a training based on the storytelling about the topics. So at the end of the day, they were not experts on any of the topics that we covered, but they had clear ideas of how those things can be implemented in their, for example, day-to-day lives or in their reality or on the ground where they live. So I believe one is the language, which should be taken in consideration, but the other thing, we have to set, expectations realistically in accordance with the audience that we're working with. And sometimes because the migrants, they don't have the educations or data standard in their home country when they're coming to the country of host, so we cannot convey the same level of training for the migrant entrepreneurs as we provide for the locals.
Thank you, Lorraine, and then Marula, and then we'll need to wrap up.
Thanks. I'll just be really quick. It's perhaps jumping on from what Matthias says. I do see the value of of mixing refugee entrepreneurs with non-refugee entrepreneurs, because this is where the networks happen.
Yeah.
And one of the challenges that I mentioned was the lack of networks to find funding. And when you're in a group with people who are not refugees, who have more access to wherever you're the sort of the local, the local startup space, the local finance space, then you have a better chance of accessing this financing than to be in a program with only refugee entrepreneurs. So that's why I feel strongly about having a diverse cohort, but still being mindful of the challenges of each, and not just the refugee, because everyone will have different challenges, but the program has to be mindful of the challenge of each individual entrepreneur. And that's why I'm sort of, the idea of smaller cohorts work really well. So that's just what I thought.
Yeah, that's great. I think there are a lot of comments in the chat reinforcing that to build a larger network beyond the Refugee Entrepreneurs Network, that integration to some degree is important, while keeping in mind the unique needs, of course. Morula, would you like to add something either to that thread or anything else that you guys have discussed?
Yeah, no, it's something else. I was looking at policies, their operations, and the legal documents they have, whereby you find some of the refugees would want, they are entrepreneurs and would want to expand their businesses to other neighboring or outside countries, but policies stop them by not giving them required documents to travel to access other places. In some countries are limited, somewhere they cannot go to urban. Those that can access urban are limited to cross borders to other countries. And if they cross, the documents they have, they don't access visa in any country. Yet, if really refugees should be entrepreneurs, it should be real one, that they can also make a big impact wherever they are. I'm also looking at their operations, whereby like in Uganda, somehow, they are limited in operations where you find policies stop them to receive a bigger amount of money. Someone may be doing business between Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania, and you operate through mobile money or through bank. Branding a refugee ID, you are limited. You are told there is a certain amount you cannot access. So when will these ones do the best business that they want? They can't withdraw beyond $1 million of Uganda shillings. This is about only 300 USD. Otherwise, they have to go through a lot of struggle. I think there is something we really need to do about the policies that can allow them to explore all other opportunities that are around them. Thank you.
I mean, I 100% agree. I think the policy environment, the regulatory environment, those, pose a lot of challenges. And I think, the trick is for the support networks, for the private sector, for the NGOs, for the enterprises working with, refugee entrepreneurs, is how to sort of creatively, get around them, or not get around, but find solutions, to them, as well as advocating, but, how to operate still within the, existing policy, environment, and solve those problems for refugee entrepreneurs in some way. In fact, in our group, we were touching upon that a little bit. And David, I see your hand up right now. About, things like access to, bank accounts, access to insurance, financial services, all of those things. And, what are innovative solutions to make that, more affordable, more accessible. David, go ahead. You have your hand up.
Sorry, I was just trying to type it quicker to save time, but then you just called on me. So basically, I just wanted to suggest that we somehow this from one-off session to some sort of working group where we actually learn more about the different organizations, see how, we've been doing a lot of research on assessments and building a library and books, and we're happy to share as much as we can with others. If anything we're doing is valuable to others, fantastic. If others, I'm sure we can learn from others as well, and then see how we can actually, we just worked to launch a public library. Nobody else in this group needs to launch a public library then. Use ours. If there are other things that other people are working on related to healthcare, great. We haven't been able to get around to figuring out how to get health insurance to teams in our programs and entrepreneurs yet, etc. And so if we could somehow like break this out, see how we can, collaborate more, etc. Then, the legal issue, I think it's crazy that we still haven't figured out where and how, just like a simple thing of, if this is your startup, here's the different options for registration, and here are the different or 26 different law firms that will help you register, or whatever. Like these things can be, every business is different, every entrepreneur is different, but so much stuff is also replicated and is similar and overlapping. And so we just need to figure out how we break it down and just anyway, working group, anyone?
No, totally in. I mean, I think, as we said at the beginning, there's no possible way we could have, come up with all the answers in this short a time. But the real problem is like lack of, spaces for exchanging ideas and collaborating, and that asymmetry of information, right? Some people have a lot of information, others don't. And, then, instead of replicating or reinventing the wheel, how do we share? Absolutely. So maybe we can come back to that working group idea after this and continue the conversation. Yeah, absolutely. Oh,
whoever said once a month, Eunice. I love it.
Yeah,
I just want to put something up, like if we have a regular date and we meet, then yeah, perfect.
Yeah,
and
so
troubleshooting and problem solving together. Absolutely.
So I just want to say that I think that just tees up really well just our closing remarks here, because that's precisely the aim here of this Migration Summit. This month has really been an experiment for us, for MIT React, NAMAL, Paper Airplanes, Karam Foundation, MIT Abdul Latif Jamil, World Educational Lab, and all of the participating organizations to really come together and see, how do we better map out the ecosystem? How do we create generative spaces for us all to come out together like this, and to share not only ideas, but really thinking about how we build. And so, I very much encourage you not only to join our rest of our sessions for this month, but to make sure you're subscribed to our newsletter, because there you'll receive updates about our recommendations for next steps, which includes supporting working groups around these very topics, really thinking through around how do we create those kind of central hubs, databases that we're really hearing across our K-12 sessions, our post-secondary sections, our workforce sessions, and our entrepreneurship sessions. There's a really common theme here that we're just tremendously excited about. And we just want to bring the energy that we've seen here in this session to those spaces. So please connect with one another, stay tuned, and we really look forward to designing more with you all. Thank you, Selen and your team at the Refugee Investment Network for this fantastic session, and we look forward to seeing you all soon. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you for giving us the space. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.